Hello there, my name is Anthony Brown and I'm very pleased to bring you another episode of our Privacy and Data Talks podcast, where we're bringing you insight, ideas and opinion from many of the world's leading privacy and data thought leaders. Today I'm very pleased to welcome Tamzin Evershed, who is, let me get this right, the Vice President and Chief Privacy Officer for American Express Global Business Travel. Tamzin is a very experienced lawyer who has held senior positions in boutique and large international law firms, global technology companies, software businesses, and has extensive data protection and privacy experience. Tamzin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on board. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Lovely to be here.
Good. So can you, just give us a brief sort of overview of your current role and, the work that you're doing at American Express Global Business Travel?
Yeah, absolutely. So American Express Global Business Travel, as the name might give away, we are a travel management company. So we're a business-to-business travel agency. We also do meetings, events all around the world. We operate in 140 countries. And we're 50% owned by American Express. So we have a lot of brand value that we have to carry. We have to deliver well. So my role is a very big role, as you can imagine. We have a privacy program that is based on binding corporate rules. So the way we operate is everywhere in the world, no matter where you are, your data will be handled in accordance with EU principles. And then we tack on whatever local requirements there might be. We're also very acquisitive. So I spend a lot of my time converting the privacy programs of other companies when they come on board. So often they're in far-flung places where the idea of EU principles is something new to them. So that takes up a lot of my work. And I think on a day-to-day basis, really, I'd say I'm a bit of a builder. I have to operationalize those paper policies that we all got into place by 25th of May 2018. And that really means rolling up my sleeves, architecting processes that people can really engage with, that work. And my biggest joy, in fact, is bringing people together so that we have a process where it whirs seamlessly, where people interact with it, where it's frictionless almost. I think another part of my role really is engaging with clients. I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing, talking to my peers in other companies, telling them about our program, reassuring them on how we're treating things so that they can trust us with their data. And naturally, I also have to be a bit of a fixer sometimes. So I've developed a very acute sense of looking at a problem, very quickly working out where the problem is and fixing it as quickly as possible. But I work with a very lean team. I have to work in a matrix organization. I have to recruit people from all areas of my business to get what I need to do done. And I think on my 360, I had some anonymous feedback that my efforts at collaboration between departments were in fact heroic. And I can tell you, sometimes they do feel heroic, but there isn't a dull moment, I would say.
Well, I could imagine, and having known you for quite a while now, Tamzin, I know that sprinkled in all of there is an amazing sense of humour and lashings of fun as well that you try to bring, to your world and no doubt your job as well. Because when the chips are down and things are difficult, that's obviously something we all need, and not least over the last sort of few weeks as well. And actually, on that note, I remember that we had a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago. And I was in situ where I am now. Anyone who's watched any of these videos so far will realise that I've got a different background today. In fact, just as a note, this picture here has been curated by my daughter, Amelie, and who really wanted me to have it within one of the videos. But anyway, you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and I was back in situ. I'm in one of our offices here. I think you commented at the time that you hadn't seen anyone in the office for a while, so that was a surprise. And I think, interestingly as well, we continued to have a chat about some of the Zoom sort of habits and behaviours that people have developed over the last few weeks, which we found very amusing. I think, for example, well, the first one is the Zoom shirt, as you nicely coined it. So, i.e. pajama bottoms with a Zoom shirt over the top. Or in some cases, perhaps I've seen people wearing full pajamas with a proper shirt over the top. So don't ask me, please, to reveal if I've got suit trousers on or not now with this shirt. So maybe I am wearing a Zoom shirt myself, but I won't confirm either way. And also the sort of interesting behaviour that we seem to have developed, which is waving goodbye on a Zoom. So at the end, it's quite
I've worked out what we're doing there. There's that uncomfortable moment. We're being very English. There's that uncomfortable moment when you say goodbye and then you have to find the button to turn off the meeting. So there's that moment where we fill it in by waving to each other.
Indeed. The left hand's doing one thing and the right hand's doing the other. It's that kind of thing. But we must maintain that we look like ducks on top of the water and everything's just going swimmingly. So anyway, fun aside, as we know, Tamzin, so much has changed in such a short period over the last few weeks, and people who have listened to these podcasts so far will know that I'm not one for dwelling on what's gone on over the last few weeks, because we're all trying to look forward and bring some joy and positivity to the world. But obviously, as we know that that the world of work and home life, the lines between them have become very blurry, as we just mentioned there as well, with the Zoom calls, etc. How do you see the world panning out now for privacy professionals sort of moving forward? And I guess you can attribute this to your own experiences as well.
Well, I would say you can't play down some of the difficulties people have gone through recently. We've all had to go through situations, perhaps where people have small children and they've got to work while they've got the small children around. I'm getting very used to seeing my colleagues' children on Zoom because they seem to participate quite a lot in meetings. People have dealt with difficulties with food shortages and things like that. But on the positive side, this is a brilliant time for the privacy professional. Absolutely. And I think if you're the kind of privacy professional who can bring flexibility, you can adapt to this new world, and you can properly risk manage, then this is the time for you. And I think what I've been seeing definitely out there is a lot of organizations are now removing steps to processes in their bureaucracy. So you have situations where perhaps they've got people on furlough, so they haven't got as many people to do the admin. Or you've got situations where they're trying to avoid face-to-face contact, but that's totally transforming the way people are using data. And I think that we're going to see that those unblockings will remain. I think a lot of us have actually appreciated them. And also, I think there are lots of organisations that have been very risk averse to the digital age. They've played it safe. And now they've actually been forced to get out there onto the internet, to have online interfaces with people. And I think they've probably been very happily surprised at how beneficial they've been. They've actually made things easier, they've saved money, their clients actually quite like that. So I think those things will continue. And if I was investing money at the moment, I would be investing in online authentication products, because we all know there is inherent risk in dealing in the internet. Do we know who we're dealing with? But actually, we are going to go down this route. So I think COVID has actually speeded up the digital transformation, and as a privacy person, we obviously have a key role to play in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no doubt the fast forward button has been pressed for all types of businesses, all sizes of businesses. And I think there's a recognition at the very highest levels of businesses that if you don't adapt and you've not adapted quickly, you're going to get left behind, ultimately. So I mean, obviously that's really interesting, Tamzin. I mean, what have you been seeing? Have you seen any specific sort of examples of this in your own sort of life or work?
Yeah, well, I just recently, for example, had to interact with the land registry.
Ah,
So I
okay.
had to do and they have a process whereby you have to identify yourself, and they give you a form which you can download from the internet, but they give you a form. You have to take that form to a solicitor with 2 passport photos. The solicitor then verifies who you are on the passport photos, just as if you were getting an actual passport. And then you have to send all of that by registered post to the lodging solicitor with an original piece of ID. So you
Sorry
have
to interrupt, but this sounds like it's 1992.
it does, but this is the world in government organisations at the moment, but COVID has swept that all away. COVID have meant that they've taken away that step. So I was able to do that without having to go to a photo booth to get the photos, without then having to go to a solicitor, without then having to queue up at a post office. I could even get the postage downloaded for a recorded delivery from the internet. And if I'd been really clever, I'd have got one of the kids to go to the post box. I mean, how convenient is that? And I know it's a temporary measure, but I think these things are going to continue to happen. And I think the driver at the moment might be COVID, but as time goes on, organisations are going to realise, hang on a minute, this actually has a commercial benefit. And I think for us as privacy professionals, our employers are going to look squarely to us, and there won't be any room for box ticking. We all know there's a risk of fraud here. We all know that with online identification, that's going to lead to processing of personal data that really opens up situations where people can lose control of their data. So our employers will be looking to us to be flexible, to be risk managers, to be able to look at these situations and do the right data protection impact assessments, to give the right level of transparency. And I think that puts us right in the driving seat. It allows us to really demonstrate our commercial value. And I think we've always known we had commercial value. Sometimes it's been very hard for us to get that over to our employers. And I did note actually a piece of news that the Competition and Markets Authority, the Information Commissioner's Office and Ofcom are actually getting together to cooperate more fully in a forum. And I think that's a clear message. They're anticipating this trend too, that there'll be so much more digital activity going on. So, a new world for us.
Indeed, and I think obviously everything you've described, and we're all aware of it, I guess. Everyone even in the general sort of population who may not be, completely au fait with privacy, is that there's a growing risk of cyber fraud out there. It's exploded, hasn't it, over the last few weeks as well. All fraud, but cyber fraud is here to stay, unfortunately.
Yeah, I kind of think the people doing all the phishing attacks, they're in lockdown too, so they've got more time on their hands.
Yeah.
But definitely, we've seen a surge of increase of these kind of attacks. One thing I would say to all my colleagues out there is, if you can do a Zoom tabletop exercise to work out how you would respond to this kind of activity, absolutely do it. We did a face-to-face one actually before COVID became an issue within Amex Global Business Travel, and it was really telling. You will spot all the holes in your procedures, and also you will probably have an opportunity to go to your CEO with a scenario where you've got a ransomware situation or what have you, and you will find out what their view is about things like, do we bring in the police? Do we pay it? That kind of thing. And I think that steer in that tabletop exercise is essential. Also the fact, if you're going to have your colleagues in America phone you in the middle of the night, are you always ready for that call? Have you got anything ready that you would actually respond at 2 a.m? All needs to be ironed out. And another thing I've noticed, because obviously I see all my colleagues on LinkedIn, is titles are changing. And I spotted this a while back. I think we're seeing a convergence of information security expertise with privacy. I think traditionally the CISO sat in one corner of the business, the Chief Privacy Officer sat in another corner. They had to collaborate, but actually that wasn't helpful, having them in those two pillars. So what I'm seeing with my peers is information security is coming into those titles. So I think the way of the future for anyone coming up, and even for people in my position, is we've got to hone those skills. And I think it does make sense to have your information security activity reporting into someone who's got a good legal knowledge of what those requirements might be. They may, well, they're very unlikely to be technical experts, but they need to be literate in IT. And I think that's a good way forward.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, Tamzin. I mean, we're seeing that, you know, speaking to our clients and the individuals in our network, I think increasingly, the lines will become more blurred. And like you say, I mean, everyone who's involved, within the various teams, each one of them is going to have to acquire new skills over the course of time so they can speak the same languages as each other, really, and ultimately be as watertight as they can. You know, there's too much at stake for these organisations. So, I mean, I think now COVID, the threat is passing. We're all concerned, obviously, as we know, about a second wave, but let's not again dwell on that. Let's try and be positive here. We had a chat a couple of weeks ago, and we were kind of musing about the new world we're working in, and we were trying to predict a little bit about how we see things moving forward. And I think we both agree that it's going to be interesting in the working week. Say, for example, things continue in the same vein as they are at the moment and have been, i.e. people working at home all the time. We thought it was quite interesting over the course of time to see if Friday, which has historically been a day that people would maybe choose to work from home at the end of a busy week and catch up on their admin, etc., will actually become the day that everyone prefers to go into the office, because actually they may socialise with each other then at the end of the week. After a week when they've been sat at home or doing remote calls, etc., they need that touchy-feely sort of thing with their team. They need to go out and have that social aspect. So what's your view on that?
Well, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I mean, I think the Zoom shirt is here to stay very much. What I hear from people, from my colleagues, is how much they've appreciated not having to do that commute, the time that they've spent with their families, just the lack of the pressure of having to go into an office. And I'm sure there are lots of employers who are now thinking, oh my goodness, the world didn't fall apart when everybody worked at home. Why are we paying for this expensive real estate? We could actually continue in this vein. And I think a lot will probably do that. And I think from my point of view as well, using these technologies, I deal with people all around the world, and I've seen more on video conferencing of those people than I ever did when we all worked in offices. So I think we're definitely carrying on there, and I would anticipate actually it'll be great for Amex Global Business Travel, because we run meetings and events, and I can imagine that there'll be a workforce predominantly working from home. Yes, they might choose to go into a smaller space and gather in groups on a Friday to socialise. We're all human beings here. But I also think companies will want to have that quarterly Beano where everybody goes somewhere and people work on issues in the business together, they socialise together, and people really get stuff done, maybe on a quarterly basis. So I think that will be a seismic change, actually, that's coming our way. For the privacy team, that change of focus, I think we're used to the idea that people homework, but it's always been the exception. And now I think it's time, if we haven't already done it, to dust off that homeworking policy. Because that homeworking policy was probably devised for one or two people in a particular circumstance. And I think when we reviewed ours, what was surprising to me actually was we were probably very well covered on the IT side, the WYSI side, because of course we're in charge of that. What we weren't so up on and needed to think about was, are we going to provide people with a shredder? We have a policy that when you homework, you can get certain items on the company and you can order from a catalogue. Well, we need to add a shredder to that. Are we really focusing enough on the idea that you should lock your office door, and you should be careful with those bits of paper as you are when you're in the office? And I think that's a new thing. And also, we've talked a lot about Zoom, but of course everyone's got their different video conferencing choice here, haven't they?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to focus as privacy professionals a lot more on it than we did, because it was almost a sideline. And so, for example, there's monitoring that goes on Zoom, all these video conferencing things. I mean, there are certain features on some of these where when you're not paying attention and you're multitasking, the person who's running the video can see. Of course, with the cameras on a lot more now, that doesn't happen so often. That's one of the benefits of mass adoption of it. But that's a form of monitoring, and you've got to get that past workers' councils. You've got to consider, have we adequately communicated that to our employees? There's also recording. You know, something should be popping up to tell people they're being recorded. Otherwise, you could have lots of problems there. And I think another point here about video conferencing, I don't know if you've noticed, when you go to conferences, often some of the privacy kind of vendors, they will give you a little sticky to put on your video camera. And I would say in this new world, privacy professionals, it's really important that we're visible. Our job is to influence behaviours. It always has been and it always will be. And there's something, if you think about executive presence, the clue there is in presence. And unless you turn that camera on in our new world, you will not be present in that. So I will say that it's almost a reversal there on the expectation. Throw the stickies away, privacy professionals. This is an important thing. And naturally, we have concerned about security. I mean, everyone has heard about the issues with Zoom where they had an add-in to the functionality that was sending information to Facebook, and that caused a kerfuffle, and we had to do a lot of work there. There are concerns about people who aren't meant to be there coming in, and my view on that is, having gone through all of this and having signed on a number of these things, is they've all got something. But it's our job to work closely with information security and really vet them, sort them out, and have the answers there. So that when your German Workers' Council, for example, comes to you and says, we're really worried, this has come out in the papers, is this right? You've got it all done. It's keeping everybody reassured about their new world, and it's all working the way it should do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think ultimately, Tamzin, as you quite rightly said, I think, you know, the privacy professionals will need to be increasingly visible, and much like yourself as well, you know, for joining me on this today and giving something back to the community. And this is what this podcast is all about, actually, trying to you know, give some insights and opinion and some stories, you know, to contemporaries and other people, you know, within the community. So I think everything you said today has been very insightful, and I, you know, really hope that people take something very interesting away from it, from somebody who sat right in the centre of this new world of privacy. I think perhaps a conversation for another day, but something that we were talking about then, or you were talking about then, about you know, safety at home, or the way people are going to be handling you know, delicate, probably not the word, but, you know, sensitive data at working from home. I just wonder as well where the land is going to lie over the course of time in terms of employers looking at KPIs, how they're going to measure what their employees are doing at home. I know some businesses, I've spoken to individuals where their companies insist that they have their webcam on from X till X to prove that they're working. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? You know, when you hear that sort of stuff. But I just wonder where that will, you know, how that will develop. And companies are going to no doubt be working on KPIs to look at what their employees are doing. And then there'll be other privacy challenges with that. But we keep these podcasts short and sweet. And certainly this has been one, Tamzin. I'm really, really grateful. It's always great fun talking to you, and I hope all of our listeners and viewers have enjoyed it. So thank you so much. We will catch up again, I'm sure, for another one in the future. But that was Tamzin Evershed bringing to us her thoughts on privacy in the new world. And should we do the wave, Tamzin?
Oh, yes, let's do the wave.
I'm going to get my I've got the hand on the mouse to click this off. And thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Tamzin. Bye now. Bye.